Hello, I'm Rick McCutcheon, a Microsoft Business Applications MVP, and I want to thank you for tuning in to Digital Adoption Talks. Today there are over 300,000, that's correct, 300,000 business professionals with digital adoption in their job titles on LinkedIn. On this show, along with my co-host Joachim Schirmacher, CEO of ClickLearn, we talk to some of the leading digital adoption experts in the Microsoft ecosystem, and we've got an expert today. This week, we are thrilled to talk to another business applications MVP and Power Platform star, Kylie Kiser. Kylie, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay, so let's just sort of kick this off and we'll introduce ourselves and tell us a little bit about your background. We'll start with you, Joachim.
Yeah, I'm the CEO of ClickLearn. So we are a single software company. We develop a solution for creating user adoption inside the entire Dynamics suite, and we are on a daily basis serving customers and ISVs around the world in creating better user experiences for their end clients.
Okay, thank you. And Kylie, we are, privileged to have you here because, even when you're not on a digital adoption show, that's what you do. You run user groups, you mentor people, you speak at conferences, and even when I meet up with you outside of the show, you're talking digital adoption. So tell us a little bit about your background and who you are and what you do.
For sure. Yeah. So I'm Kylie Kiser. As Rick said, I'm a business applications MVP, and I work as a solution architect at Hitachi Solutions, which basically means, I'm working with clients day in, day out and teaching them how to use the tool and delivering the best tools and solutions for them. And part of that role does include doing training and guiding them in their training plan for their users. And I've been working with Dynamics for I guess since it was CRM, right? So 10, 12 years now, and been involved with the Power Platform since those tools started launching. And I've also, most of that time, been running the Washington, D.C. user group, formerly focused just on Dynamics 365, now kind of on Dynamics and the Power Platform. And right now we're meeting monthly, so constantly just bringing new content and discussion opportunities to our community. So it's great to be here today to talk more about that.
And Kylie, we should talk a little bit about your background and your rise to become an MVP because you were just a user, but you were an
A
administrator of
regular
a CRM
person.
system at one point.
Yeah, true. So when I first started, I kind of fell into working with CRM like so many people do, and knew nothing about it, and started on a team as just kind of a project manager assistant or something like that, and used that time to learn a lot about workflows, especially because that's what was important in automation at the time. And I learned a lot about administration of the system. And that's what brought me to my next role, where I was an admin with a financial services company for many years. And I worked with them and became kind of their product owner, and was working closely with our consultants and working closely with the team and the business to deliver functionality to them. And that team, we also were doing a lot. We did a migration from 2011 to 2016, which was a big deal at the time. And kind of that's important for this conversation because it was a big training opportunity, right? Because we had all of our hundreds of users that all needed to be trained on the new functionality, and they needed to be happy about it. And so, all of those topics kind of fit into what we're doing here. And then in my more recent role right before Hitachi, also kind of doing a product owner role for the CRM system and working with different groups throughout the business. But why that's especially important for this conversation is that's how I met the lovely folks from ClickLearn and started working with their tools. So part of my role there was kind of leading the rollout of ClickLearn to our business and setting up the learning portal and working with our team to start iteratively delivering training content to our users. So yeah, great
Okay,
question.
fantastic. So I'm going to actually start our next question with you as well. So as an MVP, how important is digital adoption and leveraging the right learning platforms to your clients and the people you mentor?
Yeah, I think training and learning is just so important, and it's so difficult, right? Because it's the hardest part of any new system is getting people to actually use it. And what's the point of doing all this work and delivering these systems if nobody's going to use it, right? And so we need to make sure that they have the tools to use the system and continually be getting better and enjoying what they're doing, right? And I think we also need we just need to make sure that users know what they need to be able to do their jobs effectively, and we need to find ways to continually enforce this training. So I think there's a lot of different ways that we can do that, right? Whether it's through a lunch and learn or tips and tricks or kind of some kind of embedded training, but we just need to find a way to make it really easy to access and quick and relevant materials, right, for users. And I think we even see this not just when you're training a specific group of users at a client organization, but even out in the world, right? As I'm creating YouTube content or things like that, it's really important to make sure things are easy to find, make sure they're small, digestible bits so that people can quickly get the information they need and get back to productivity. I think also something I think we'll talk about a little bit further later is also learning styles and things like that. Is we really need to figure out how to take advantage of people learning differently or wanting to consume content differently, because they want to see things in multiple ways and be able to get that information, which makes it harder on us needing to deliver that training. But I think it's really important to make sure they can effectively consume it. And then, of course, we add in the additional complexity that our platforms and our tools continue to change every day, and we need flexible learning and flexible training to help people actually still be able to use the training if changes happen, or be able to update, or for us to be able to update the training that we're delivering quickly as those changes happen. So I guess the short answer is digital adoption is super important, and it's very important to find great tools that are flexible for delivering this, because it's like the most important thing of what we do, right?
Perfect. Joachim, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting to hear that the idea around learning styles, because some consider it sort of an urban myth within the learning, but I think that most of those studies are actually concentrated on preschoolers or the school generation. But I think that what we are covering now in terms of technology is that we have a relatively large divergence inside the job market in terms of age and especially in terms of your skill set inside IT. And in order to cater for all of those, I really think that the idea of learning styles comes into play. The idea that there are different, at least different learn paces, and that a single form of learning, be it inside the system in sort of a speech bubble style, might not apply as the right tool of trade for every single learning purpose. I think it has to do with the age difference that we see on the job market, and I think it's really interesting that this is coming into play again.
Okay, great. So the next question we have, Kylie, when we start to look at what's happened over the last couple of years, right? We could tap somebody on the shoulder and say, hey, how do you do this? All of a sudden, we're distributed into our own homes and we're kind of on our own. And I think we've seen a lot of effects in the way that people learn and their learning style. So let's talk a little bit about, working in seclusion. And also, you're doing a lot of work with Power Apps along with first party apps. So talk a little bit about, some of the things that you're seeing with digital adoption in those areas.
Sure, sure. So yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head as you're talking about the struggles that we're having now, because it's so difficult to train people virtually, I think, because even so pre working from home, everything, the golden standard was if you wanted to do good training, you had to get people in a room and get them focused. And so now we need to find ways. We can't do a full day training class like you used to, right? You can, but you're going to lose attention, right? And you need to find ways to keep bringing people in and finding ways to keep that training engaging. And also, I think part of this involves finding ways to build community around your training as well, right? Whether that's community outside of your organization, through Twitter or whatever, through our chapter, or if that's internal. But I think that's so difficult to make sure people feel comfortable asking for help and asking for finding the training and things like that. Um, and I think as we talk about learning styles, as that came up, it's so, I think what's important, and Joachim, you also brought up a great point. Like, a lot of people think learning styles don't exist, and Heidi Newhauser did a great presentation for my chapter a couple months ago, where she brought up that exact point. Like, a lot of people say they don't exist, but really this study shows not that people have a specific learning style, but that people need to experience content in multiple ways, right?
Yeah.
So they need some of that hands-on, they need some of the talking, they need some, you know, other avenues, and so it's hard to do that virtually too. And so I think that's a struggle, is just finding ways to draw people in and embrace all of those things, because it's so easy. Rick and I both do webinars and things like that. It's so easy to get up here and just talk to people, but then we're missing so many different ways that we need to help people engage with that content to really learn the material. And I think it's going to be so I think that's why it's important to look at some of these different embedded training opportunities, right? Anything that can be interactive, that it's right there, that they can get to it quickly, and then they can choose how they want to engage with that content, like having videos versus having things that they can read. I think that's really important. Um, and so I think we just need to, I think it's good being remote. I think it causes us to not just say, oh, well, if we have in-person training, that will be enough, right? We have to embrace and look at those other options because we need to, right? And then I think it's actually going to help our adoption more because we're using all of these different things. Um, but I think you also were asking about power apps and first party apps and how training is different for all of those and kind of what's
Well,
happening
just
there.
on that, I can go
Yeah.
online and see how to use the sales module. There's lots of
Hmm.
training out there, but I've got some citizen developer building something, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden it shows up on my desktop. You know, it might be easy to build, but how do we get people to absorb that technology?
Right. Yeah. And I think there's so many little questions in your big question, right? Because we're also in your kind of example, we're not just talking about user adoption, we're also talking about governance, right? And making sure that our makers know what they're doing and they're not getting bad information, and making sure we're empowering them to deliver good apps in a safe way to the organization, right? And so I think a lot of this comes back to the kind of center of excellence idea, right? Is setting up a place for people within our organization who are interested in delivering apps and providing feedback, giving them a safe place to have those conversations and talk about things and learn deliver how to deliver those apps, right? Like, our training needs to include that maker training, like how do you create an app? How do you work with Dataverse and things like that? And I think that's scary for a lot of us coming from an IT background, right? You're like, I don't want my regular people to be able to create these apps and do things. But I think we're kind of at that point in our world now that we need to give them that power, and we need to know how can we do it effectively and safely, right? Because we can't train on apps if we don't know they exist, right? So if we have this center of excellence and we're working together as they're delivering these apps, then we can figure out what we need training on and who to train it on, and making sure the right people have access to these apps so they're not just showing up on your list unannounced, right? Like you said.
Okay, thank you. Jochen,
Yeah.
would you like to add anything to what Kylie was saying?
I know. I think that these no code, low code, I wouldn't want to be on the back end of that right now, because, as you said, there's a configuration management theme and probably a change management theme as well that we probably haven't seen all the solutions to. But one of the things that's really interesting is that instead of having like 178 apps, which is by any means a very large number of applications to serve, inside an organization on average. Now with Power Apps coming into the picture and us enabling essentially normal business people to be able to create applications, that scope is going to grow tremendously. And that obviously also pushes the idea that vendor-based training at some point is going to lose its completely anything any reason to have that, because the scope outside is going to be completely built up by small composable Lego bricks, and the bricks are getting smaller and they are increasing in quantity. So I think that the training perspective from the client side really pushes towards you need to get this done inside your own organization, because you're really becoming very unique in your IT landscape. You don't look like anyone else anymore. So I think that for me, as on the user adoption side, I'm very happy about the trend. But I think that if I were on the other side of the table, on the IT side, probably not so much.
Okay, thank you. So Kylie, we want to thank you for joining us today on this show. And any closing thoughts? And also, where can people follow you? I hear you have a huge following on some social media platforms.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And, good luck to all of our watchers on their training and adoption journey. Yeah, I'd love for you guys to check out my blog. It's at kyliekiser.com, or you can find me on Twitter or LinkedIn or YouTube. And I'd love you guys to come out to my chapter meetings. So we're the Washington, D.C. Power Platform user group, and you can find that link on my blog or on any of my social media. But I'd love you guys to come out. We meet monthly, and we're meeting virtually, so people can come from all over the world. Yeah,
Okay,
thanks for
thank you,
having me.
Kylie. You're welcome.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna normally I spend the last 2 minutes on trying to promote my own product, but today I'm just gonna do something different. I'm just gonna ask everyone to go in and follow Kylie's initiative on the Power Platform. I think you're moving really fast ahead on the Power Platform. I think there's some really interesting stuff going on. So if you follow Kylie Kiser's blog on this, I think you're in good shape to start seeing the perspective of what can these low code, no code platforms do for you.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks.